I want to start today with a really universal human experience. You're having one of those days where it just feels like the universe is personally attacking you. You know, you slept through your alarm, the coffee maker decides to explode, you snapped at your partner over something completely trivial, and by 9:00 a.m., you're just done. And in that moment, there's this almost physical need for a giant red button you could just smash to reset everything.
The universal do-over button. It's a
Yeah.
very, very potent psychological need.
Exactly. We all crave that fresh start. But here's the thing. When we talk about fresh starts, especially in education or parenting, it often gets framed as this soft, sentimental idea, Turn the other cheek, forgive and forget. It feels like a courtesy.
Right, it's positioned as a moral virtue. I'm being kind by letting this go.
But the research we're looking at today, it's from a presentation on grace in the classroom. It completely flips that narrative. The argument here isn't that fresh starts are just nice. The argument is that they're a neurobiological necessity for learning to even happen.
That is the big headline, isn't it? We're looking at the actual mechanics of the brain, specifically the interplay between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. And the source material makes a really compelling case that grace, or maybe the strategic use of fresh starts, is a high-leverage tool for regulating emotion and unlocking cognitive potential.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're not just talking about how to be a nicer teacher or a nicer parent. We're unpacking the science of safety. We're going to look at how certain interactions literally change the brain's architecture. We'll get into why co-regulation is a prerequisite for self-discipline and, importantly, how you do this without becoming a doormat.
And that last part is key, because usually when people hear grace, they immediately think permissiveness. And the data here suggests it's actually the exact opposite.
So let's start with the biology. The source material kicks off with this idea of safety. But they don't mean fire drills or locking doors. They're talking about something called neurosceived safety. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, this is a critical distinction. Physical safety is objective. Is there a tiger in the room? No. Neurosceived safety is totally subjective. It's what your nervous system, your subconscious, detects as a threat. And the source highlights that the human brain is a survival machine first and a learning machine second. It's always scanning for threats.
And a threat in a classroom or at home isn't a tiger. It could be a teacher's raised eyebrow, a sarcastic comment.
Or even just the memory of getting yelled at yesterday.
Right.
Precisely. And this is where we get into what's called the amygdala hijack. When a student feels threatened socially, emotionally, whatever, the amygdala, which is like the brain's smoke detector, it just goes off. It floods the system with cortisol and adrenaline. And here's the crucial part for educators and parents. When the amygdala is in charge, it effectively cuts power to the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex being the CEO of the brain, the part that handles logic, math, impulse control.
All the higher order thinking.
Right.
So if a child is walking on eggshells because they're in a, let's say, high conflict relationship with an adult, their brain is physically diverting resources away from the learning centers to the defense centers. The source says it explicitly. Ongoing conflict leaves children vulnerable academically. It's not that they won't learn, it's that they physiologically can't.
Wow. That completely reframes the whole bad student narrative. If a kid is acting out or zoning out, we tend to think it's an attitude problem. This suggests it's actually a safety problem.
Often, yes. And this is where the fresh start comes in.
Yeah.
The source discusses how consistent, low-conflict relationships predict engagement. So if a student had a meltdown yesterday, and they walk in today, and the teacher gives them that cold shoulder, that look of suspicion, the child's amygdala instantly fires up again. The thought is, I'm not safe, the bear is still here.
And the walls go up.
The walls go up, and the learning shuts down. A fresh start isn't just saying, I forgive you. It's a clear signal to the limbic system. It says, the threat is gone, you are safe, you can bring your prefrontal cortex back online.
It's basically a system reboot.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It's a reboot that clears the cortisol cache and allows the operating system to run the learning software again.
Okay, the biology makes sense. The brain needs safety. But let's get practical. The source material pivots to this idea that the adult in the room is responsible for creating that safety. And they use this term co-regulation.
This is probably the single most important concept in modern educational psychology. I really believe that.
And it's so misunderstood. I think a lot of us hear regulation and we think of control. Like, I need to regulate this classroom, which means I need to make them quiet.
Right. Or we tell a kid, you need to calm down. We expect them to self-regulate. But the source makes a very strong point. You can't learn to self-regulate in a vacuum. You have to borrow someone else's nervous system first. That is co-regulation.
Borrowing a nervous system. That's a fascinating image. What's actually happening there?
Okay, think of the adult as a thermostat and the child as a thermometer. A thermometer just reflects the temperature of the room. If the room is chaotic and hot, the thermometer reads high.
Right.
A thermostat, on the other hand, detects the temperature, but then it actively works to bring it back to a set point.
But what usually happens is the adult becomes a thermometer too. The kid gets angry, so the adult gets angry. The kid yells.
The adult yells louder,
Mhm.
exactly. And now you have two dysregulated brains just feeding off each other's chaos. The source argues that for a fresh start to work, the adult has to be the thermostat. You have to come in with a regulated state, a calm, steady voice, relaxed posture, which literally helps the child mirror neurons fire in a way that says, oh, okay, we're calm now.
That is asking a lot of the adult, though. I mean, the source acknowledges this is hard work. It requires a teacher or a parent to override their own defensive instinct.
It is incredibly hard. It is a leadership skill at its core.
Yeah.
But the alternative is an escalation cycle that just destroys the relationship and the learning environment. The source points out that a teacher's willingness to repair and return to baseline, that is a teaching tool in itself. It models what emotional maturity actually looks like.
And that leads perfectly into the repair aspect,
Yeah.
because the source says the fresh start isn't just a morning thing. It's something that can happen 10 minutes after a blowout.
Yes, the concept of repair is all about closing the loop. Let's say there was a conflict, the teacher had to be firm, maybe voices were raised. A repair is the adult coming back a few minutes later and saying, hey, that was a tough moment. We're okay. I'm not mad at you. Let's try again.
I want to pause on that because I think there's a real fear there for a lot of people. I can hear the skeptics, and frankly, sometimes I am the skeptic thinking, if I repair, if I give a fresh start every time a kid acts out, am I just training them that there are no consequences? Am I just being a pushover?
The fear of permissiveness. It is the #1 barrier to adopting this approach.
Right. So does grace just mean no rules?
The source is absolutely adamant about this.
Yeah.
No. In fact, they argue that you cannot have true grace without boundaries. If there are no boundaries, it's not grace. It's just negligence.
Okay, so how do you thread that needle? How do you do grace and discipline at the same time?
It all comes down to separating the behavior from the relationship. The source calls for using grace-based language without removing boundaries.
Walk us through a concrete example. Let's take a classic one. You have a student, let's call him Michael, who gets frustrated during math and just throws his book on the floor. A standard high conflict response would be, Michael, pick that up right now. Go to the principal's office.
Right. And that response attacks Michael, the person,
Right.
and it severs the connection. It just cranks at the threat level. Michael's brain goes into fight or flight, and he probably doubles down.
So what does the grace-based version look like? He still threw the book. We can't have that.
No, we can't. The boundary remains. We do not throw books. But the delivery changes to preserve the relationship. It might sound like this. The teacher gets down to eye level, which lowers the threat, and says, Michael, I can see you're really frustrated right now, but we don't throw books in this classroom because it's not safe.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the book on your desk. You take 2 minutes in the quiet corner to reset, and then we will try the problem again together.
Okay, let's unpack that. You enforce the rule. He has to take a break. He's not getting away with it.
Correct. But notice what else happened. You validated the emotion. I see you're frustrated. You maintained the safety of the whole class. And most importantly, you offered the path back. Then we will try again. That is the fresh start.
It changes the message from you are a bad kid to you made a bad choice and here's how we fix it.
Exactly. And that distinction is what builds resilience. If a child thinks they are the mistake, they just give up. If they understand the mistake is something they can fix, they learn.
This connects to that idea of firmness and compassion. It's not an either-or.
It's a both-and. High expectations for behavior, but high support for reaching those expectations.
Let's get into the toolkit. The source promises research-informed tools, and I want listeners to have specific things they can use tomorrow. One of the big ones mentioned is morning greetings.
Yes. And this sounds so trivial, right? Say hi to the kids. But the research behind it is incredibly robust. One study I saw in similar literature shows that positive greetings at the door can increase academic engagement by up to 20 percentage points.
That is a massive return on investment for just saying hello, but it's not just a robotic good morning, is it?
No, it has to be authentic. It's an emotional check-in at the door. It's, Looking the student in the eye, using their name, maybe referencing something specific. Hey, Sarah, good to see you. How was practice last night?
It goes right back to that signal we talked about. It tells the amygdala, you are seen, you belong here, you are safe.
And critically, if Sarah had a terrible day yesterday, that greeting resets the clock. It tells her, I'm not holding yesterday against you. The slate is clean before she even sits down.
The source also talks about brief check-ins and reading nonverbal cues. This seems so important for the kids who fly under the radar, the ones who shut down instead of acting out.
The quietly struggling students, yes. The source suggests monitoring the emotional temperature of the room. If you see a student slumped over, head on the desk, just looking tense.
Yeah.
Don't wait for the explosion.
So what's the move there? You don't want to make a big scene?
No, that just triggers shame. You want a low-profile intervention, you walk by, you tap the desk, and you whisper, hey, you seem a little off today. Everything okay? Need a minute.
And what if they push back? I'm fine, leave me alone.
You respect the space, but you maintain the lifeline. You don't take the bait. You just say, okay, glad you're fine. I'm just checking in. Let me know if that changes.
Mm-hmm.
You've just proven you're a safe person. You're available without forcing the issue. You're banking trust for later.
Banking trust. I like that. It's like you're making a deposit so you can make a withdrawal when you have to give a hard correction.
Exactly. And the ultimate deposit is the repair conversation. We touched on this, but the source gives a specific framework for when the adult messes up.
Which happens. We're all human. We get tired. We snap.
We do. And the traditional model of authority says, never apologize to a child. It makes you look weak. The science says the exact opposite. Vulnerability increases authority because it builds trust.
So what does a good repair script from an adult sound like?
It's simple and direct. Hey, class, I raised my voice earlier. I was frustrated that we weren't listening, but I shouldn't have yelled. I'm sorry. Let's take a breath and restart this lesson.
That is so powerful. It humanizes the teacher. And it teaches kids that a relationship can survive a conflict.
That is the life skill. If we want kids to be able to repair with their spouses or their coworkers in 20 years, they have to see it modeled right now. They have to know a rupture isn't the end of a relationship.
This all circles back to the philosophy the source calls every day is a new day. It's almost like a strategic amnesia.
It is. It's the refusal to let the past dictate the future. If we label a child based on yesterday's behavior, he's the troublemaker, she's the lazy one, we are engaging in confirmation bias. We will look for evidence to support that label.
And the child will rise or fall to meet it?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So the fresh start breaks that cycle. It liberates the child to be someone different today than they were yesterday. And that is the essence of education, really. It's change.
It's compelling stuff. We've covered the neuroscience of safety, how the brain literally can't learn in defense mode. We've talked about co-regulation, the adult being the thermostat, and we've looked at the tools, greetings, boundaries, repairs.
It's a comprehensive framework for what grace actually means in practice.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to pivot just a little. We've been talking about this in terms of how we treat others, students, our own children, maybe employees. But as I was reading this, I had a realization.
Okay.
Well, if this biological mechanism is true, if the brain needs safety and a fresh start to move past failure and improve, why are we so terrible at applying this to ourselves?
That is the provocative question, isn't it? We are often our own worst dysregulators.
Right. I mean, think about your internal monologue. If I snap at my kids or I bomb a presentation, my internal narrator doesn't say, hey, you're frustrated, let's reset. It says, you're an idiot. You always mess this up. Why can't you get it together?
We trigger our own amygdala hijack. We keep ourselves in a state of threat, which, as we've just established, actually makes it harder to do better next time.
We refuse to give ourselves the fresh start. So here's my challenge to you, the listener, and honestly to myself. The next time you spiral, the next time you make a mistake, try treating yourself like Michael in the classroom.
Be your own regulated adult.
Exactly. Catch that negative self-talk and interrupt it. Say, okay, that went badly. I'm feeling shame right now, and that's okay. But I'm not a bad person. I'm going to take a breath, hit the reset button, and try again.
It applies the exact same science. You're lowering your own cortisol so you can access your own prefrontal cortex, your own wisdom.
It turns out being nice to yourself isn't just fluff either. It's a strategy.
It's the only strategy that really works long term.
On that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you for diving deep with us today into the neuroscience of grace.
Always a pleasure to unpack this stuff.
Go give yourself and someone else a fresh start today. We'll see you on the next deep dive.